Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Interconnect Hub podcast, powered by DataGryd. DataGryd is a premier data center provider located in the iconic 60 Hudson Street building. To learn more, visit www.datagryd.com. Enjoy the episode.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to the Interconnect Hub podcast, powered by DataGryd. With me is Tom Brown, the president and CEO of DataGryd. And we're going to be discussing the story of DataGryd, what makes it unique, the story behind Tom Brown, as well as discussing what you can expect in future episodes. So I couldn't be more excited to introduce Tom Brown, again, president and CEO of DataGryd. Tom, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks. So why don't we start with the title of the podcast, the Interconnect Hub. Say a little bit about that, what your thinking is behind that, and just explain that, please.
Sure, Doug. The Interconnect Hub is centered around the most recognizable address in all of data communications, 60 Hudson Street. 60 Hudson Street, dating back to 1929 when it was built, was always a telecommunications hub. As time evolved and technologies have increased, you'll see more and more folks being here resident in this building. There's well over 300 service providers, whether they're cloud providers, whether they're traditional service providers, both domestic and international. Here at 60 Hudson Street is a latency-dense data hub.
So tell us a little bit about the story of DataGryd. How long have you been in existence? Have you always been at 60 Hudson Street? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. So DataGryd is a single asset data center, premier data center company. We started back in 2011. One of our founders, Peter Feldman, who was also with a company called Telex, envisioned a world-class data center within 60 Hudson Street with the good fortune of two city agencies, New York City agencies, both the Department of Buildings and Department of Corrections, that took 4 floors, and they resided here for decades upon decades, well over 50 years. They had moved out, and 4 floors became available. And what we envisioned at the time in 2011 was to build out this data center. Traditionally here in the building, if you did want to do that, you had to deal with a legacy telecommunications suites. This was raw space that we demolitioned office space and really had a clean slate to build out a power dense facility along with the ability to interconnect between and within our 2 floors, the 5th and 6th floor. It's 120,000 square feet, one of the single largest data centers in all of New York and arguably in the tri-state area.
Wow, that is really unique. So tell us about your story. I mean, how did you get involved with DataGryd?
Sure. So back in late 2017, our chairman at the time reached out to me, who was my previous CEO at FiberNet, where I spent 10 years, approached me, and DataGryd was at an inflection point where they were focused on revenue generation and expanding and broadening the prospects that we felt would be well suited for 60 Hudson Street here. So through the process, was very excited to come on board to lead DataGryd to its next step in success.
So let's talk about that. Let's talk about those next steps. So obviously pretty unique, like you said. You're one of the largest, if not the largest, data center in the tri-state area. Tell us a little bit about some of the industry trends, things that you're excited about that you'd like people to know.
We believe we're well positioned, Doug, and I say that because of the emergence of 5G. That's all you hear about, right? You pick up any industry trade magazine, or you see it on TV with the lead providers, Verizon, T-Mobile, AT&T, talking about 5G. And really what that is going to bring to the marketplace is total ubiquity to your experience. And it's all about your experience. So being that we have 4 million eyeballs that are right outside our doorstep, along with the density of providers in this building, we believe the impact of 5G, which will require more data processing exponentially than that of 4G, we believe that will be well suited for those providers to be able to process that data transmission. In addition, you're also seeing IoT and AI also going to have an impact over the next couple of years. So we believe that light at the end of the tunnel is certainly not a train coming our way, but a tremendous opportunity.
Yeah, it's true, because we're going to need so much more space, right? I mean, you think about, IoT is going to blow open our need for data for sure.
Yeah, you're going to see more and more data processing. It's funny how equipment has evolved over time to be a lot smaller, but what's unique about DataGryd is our processing power, utilizing the word power. We have 12 megawatts of power from a direct feed from the utility. So there's a layer of diversity here at 60 Hudson Street. We have a total of 15 megawatts of power. That's very, very uncommon in a metro data center. So as the requirements for each footprint require more and more power, we're well suited. And the ability for us to custom design your edge pop, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, we are well suited to provide those power requirements as a result of the feed that we received from the utility, Con Ed, here in New York.
Yeah, let's talk about that custom design. So what does that look like? What does that entail?
So today, again, we have 2 floors, the 5th and 6th floor. The 5th is an anchor tenant that we have that is completely sold out. But we took a step back when I joined the company, Doug, and looked at what the market trends were. Folks are not taking large parcels of space as they did years ago. They're looking at it and saying, what is it that we need today? Because there has been such a tremendous growth in data consumption and network consumption that you only need to build out what's required at that time. So hence the edge pops were born. And that's a very broad term, an edge pop. But being here in New York City, particularly downtown in close proximity to the financial services community, but we cast a wide net. And what I mean by casting a wide net, it's all of those service providers, whether it's a cloud provider, whether it's a traditional service provider, an exchange. These are all folks that need this latency to go ahead and process that. So that looks like 100 kW, which are equivalent to, let's just call it 50 cabinets, all the way up to 500 kW. So we're taking smaller increments of space that are custom designed, and we're able to provide them their interconnectivity needs. That's a whole other unique asset that we have here, Doug, as well, is our ability to interconnect and mitigate this cross-connect burden. Within our industry, that's been a challenge because it's an expense that really hits on the margin of each deal. The whole challenge behind connectivity, market today, you'll see a tremendous decline in price between city pairs, whether it's based on 100 gig or 10 gig, you've seen pricing decline. And the hyperscalers, Doug, have just continually consumed network at exponential levels. In statistics is that AWS and the hyperscalers, for example, double their network every 18 months. That is just absolutely unheard of. Years ago, they thought there was enough glass in the ground to last everybody, but all these new networks that are coming up that are able to not only even this new glass, but if you're able to transmit far greater amounts of bandwidth. So pricing of bandwidth has come down, but this little thing called the cross-connect, whether it's within a suite or within floors, costs almost as much as the city pair. And that's a challenge. So what we're able to do is provide direct connectivity within and between our suites for a fraction of the cost via a conduit, which is a 4-inch pipe that you can pull a dense fiber count cable and be able to connect with your partner. This mitigation creates a great deal of efficiency. So when folks think about 60 Hudson Street, you got to think about the total cost of ownership, both real estate and the ability to interconnect. So when we compare ourselves to someone who might have a lower cost alternative, perhaps across the river in New Jersey, it's really a niche play here in 60 Hudson Street for us to have the ability to provide dense power application as well as being able to interconnect and reduce that cost. So when you look at it, it becomes very cost effective, even though this building warrants a premium as far as real estate is concerned. Anywhere in New York City, Doug, as you know, real estate is at a premium.
Definitely. No question about that. But really exciting stuff, really cool. I want to, so, giving people a little bit of the story and behind DataGryd today. I also want to just ask you, so I know you've been on some podcasts before, but why the podcast? And then I want to ask you about, what people can expect. What are some of the kinds of things people can expect coming up? So say a little bit about that.
Sure. We're excited about this because we want to take the next step in providing a message and continuing to provide our message here at DataGryd, but also expand that with not only our customers, but also vendors and industry experts who are very familiar with the Interconnected Hub here at 60 Hudson Street. But everyone's busy, and now you're seeing more and more focus on folks being able to listen as opposed to reviewing reams and reams of paper. Case in point, we used to visit trade shows and have boxes of marketing collateral that we would hand out, and ultimately, and I'm guilty of myself, that typically goes in the trash bin and not back on the plane with me. I'd much rather, while I'm traveling, listen to a podcast and multitask while I'm catching up on emails. It's just a much easier way to not only broaden our audience, but also to provide a message that is efficient for everyone.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm really excited about it. And so tell people a little bit about some of the kinds of things that they can expect on future episodes. Not asking you to plan out your life for the next foreseeable future, but say a little bit about some of the things that you envision talking about or having guests on, just sort of, what people can expect.
Sure. So it's really it's twofold. One is directly related to DataGryd, and the other is really customer driven to see the trends of the business, keep folks up to date on what's happening not only here but throughout the industry. There are the same challenges that folks see here in New York globally, and being able to shrink the world and be able to share with folks what actually is happening here in the industry pertinent to the world of interconnectivity.
My guest today has been Tom Brown, the president and CEO of DataGryd, and you've been listening to the Interconnect Hub powered by DataGryd. Tom, thanks so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Doug, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much. Looking forward to additional episodes.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
You've been listening to the Interconnect Hub podcast powered by DataGryd. DataGryd is a premier data center provider located in the iconic 60 Hudson Street building. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or wherever you consume your audio. To learn more about DataGryd and the services they provide, visit www.datagryd.com. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll be back soon with a new episode.